Please, so he's sleeping in here, man.
Make sure you're alright, man.
My mom live right here.
You're sleeping with the car drive.
Bro, my mom live right here. Why are you walking up like...
You don't need to scream, man. We're just trying to help you out.
I'm okay. My mom live right here.
We're looking for stolen cars. We see you sleeping and you got weed sitting right there.
There's weed all over, man. Yo. Here. Don't fucking do it! Don't do it! Do it! Don't do it! Shot fired.
First, it was George Floyd. That man done stuck his knee on his neck, cut off the breath from his body. Then we saw what happened to Jacob Blake. Shot the man 7 times. No man can escape the police with all their guns. Then it was Rayshard Brooks. Brother couldn't even get a nap in front of a Wendy's. Then we just saw what happened to Breonna Taylor. Shot that woman to death as she was trying to sleep. Then it was Daunte Wright. Man could not even get into his car without being shot. They say it was an accident. But every officer knows what a taser feels like in your hand. And then we heard about Ma'Khia Bryant. Shot that woman 4 times just because she wanted to hold the knife. And all these white boys be walking around with guns. Black woman can't even walk around with a knife. But now we've got a news story. It's the story of Andrew Brown. The man was shot just because he was driving a car. Police officers surrounded his car with their own cars. Brother tried to back up, shot him in the arm 3 times. Right in the arm 3 times. And as if that wasn't enough, as the brother was trying to drive forward, shot him right in the back of the head. It was an execution, everyone. This is America right now, where police officers, well, they are the new KKK. Anyway, so I just gave you guys basically the narrative for the news story that the media is pushing in order to stoke up racial tensions. And that is the story of Andrew Brown. This has become the latest story that the media is focusing on. But from what I've been reading so far, it looks like this is just like Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, Jacob Blake, Daunte Wright, Ma'Khia Bryant. It looks like this is just another nothing story. This story isn't remarkable. It doesn't signify anything. It doesn't indicate any sort of new installment in American society. It's just another day on the American streets. It's just another day in the life of a police officer. This happens all the time in the United States. Andrew Brown had a warrant out for his arrest. He was selling drugs. He was selling cocaine and meth. He sold cocaine to a police informant, and he got caught. So there was a warrant out for his arrest. The police officers surrounded him. They surrounded him while he was in his vehicle, and they were surrounding him with their own cars. The police were. And they were trying to block him. He was trying to escape from the police. And in the process, he was trying to use his car as a weapon. Now, the family of Andrew Brown has become all of a sudden the judge and the jury, because they're already pushing their own conclusion as to what took place before the court has even decided anything. They're already jumping to their own conclusions. You have the son of Brown saying it was an execution because there was a bullet in the back of the guy's head. Well, so what? So what? Then you read these articles, and the media is just stoking up racial tensions right now. They're trying to get black people to hate police officers. They're promoting this idea. They're sparking anger, and all they're doing really is destroying the cohesiveness of the country. But the family all of a sudden is just, they know everything, right? They've investigated everything. They are the judge. They are the jury. And you read these media reports, and they'll say something like, "Oh, private autopsy report shows Andrew Brown was shot 5 times." Well, that means nothing. Takia Bryant was shot 4 times, and the cop was in the right. Jacob Blake was shot 7 times, and the officers were on the right because Jacob Blake was reaching for something in his car. It could have been a knife, it could have been a gun, and the cop shot him. The same thing goes for Andrew Brown. Andrew Brown was using his vehicle as a weapon. The cops had him surrounded, and he was trying to hit the officers in the process of trying to escape. Now, the North Carolina prosecutor reviewed the police footage of the shooting of Andrew Brown, and he concluded that this was not an execution. In fact, he has gone against claims from Andrew Brown's family that this was an execution. And this is what the district attorney, Andrew Womble, had to say about the footage. It says, "As it backs up," meaning as Brown's car backs up, "it does make contact with law enforcement officers. The next movement of the car is forward. It is in the direction of law enforcement and makes contact with law enforcement. It is then and only then you hear shots." So you only hear gunshots from the police when Brown's car hits law enforcement. And at that point, the officers have a right to use deadly force because a car, as all of you already know, is a deadly weapon, or can be used as a deadly weapon, because cars were not made to kill people, even though they do all the time. But yeah, this whole thing with Andrew Brown, this is a nothing story. And in fact, I actually want to share with you guys something. I can almost guarantee you this is pretty similar to what happened to Andrew Brown. Play the clip.
Hey, please, so he's sleeping in here, man.
My
Make sure you're
mom,
alright, man.
my mom live right here.
You're sleeping with the car drive.
Bro, my mom live right here. Why are you walking up like,
You don't need to
huh?
scream, man. We're just trying to help you out.
I'm okay. My mom live right here.
So here, man, looking for stolen cars. We see you sleeping, and you got weed sitting right there.
There's weed all over, man. Yo. Here. Don't fucking do it! Don't do it! Do it!
Now, the family wants you to think that this was an execution. And there's a quote from the lawyer for Brown's family, or the lawyer that's representing Brown, even though he's dead. The Brown family lawyer, her name is Chantel Sherry Lassiter. And she says, "Let's be clear. This was an execution. Andrew Brown was in his driveway. Sheriff's truck blocked him in his driveway. so he could not exit his driveway. Okay, so the brother could not get out of his driveway. And they're trying to make it like the cops just blocked him for no reason. Like they just wanted to kill black people, so they surrounded his car. Like, is this a thing that cops do? I don't know. Maybe because I'm so privileged in this country, but I've been living in America for around 30 years. And I've never really been bothered by a cop. Never had this situation happen to me. Never had cops break into my door. Never had cops raid me. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but they're trying to make it out to be that this guy was just in his car. You know, he was on his way to the grocery store, or he was on his way to church or college, and they surrounded his car for no reason. They surrounded his car because he was a wanted criminal and they didn't want him to escape. Now, the video of Brown's killing has not been released. The authorities have claimed that it's because they're editing the video and they want to blur out certain faces as to protect their identities. There's probably another reason. It's probably also because they want to save it for court. They want to save it for the court. Because if they release... Here's the thing. All this stuff about releasing footage to the public, that's all just for media. It makes great media publicity. The problem is that even if the video... because the family and all the people who want a race war, what they're arguing is, well, if the cops ain't got nothing to hide, and if they didn't execute Mr. Brown by shooting him in the back of the head for no reason, then they ain't got nothing to hide. They ain't got nothing to hide, so just put up the video. What you got to hide, yo? What you got to hide? And they're trying to use this. They're trying to use the fact that the video has yet to be shown to the public as evidence against the police, that the police have something to hide, that they just murdered this man for no reason whatsoever. But here's the thing is, what's the point of showing it to the public? Well, we pay taxes and they owe us. Okay. Even if the video shows Brown almost running over law enforcement or hitting cop cars with his car, even if it shows all of that as clear as day, the mob, the BLMers, the defund the policers, the abolish the policers, all of these attention whores, they will be angry no matter what. You can't, like, when people have a conviction in their head, their ego, their very being attaches itself to that idea. This is part of human existence. If you have a belief, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how destructive it is, your ego gets attached to the belief because it, in a way, represents who you are as a person, or it's something that you have based your identity on. Like, the existence of your identity becomes determined by this belief system. If that belief system is shown right before your eyes to be rubbish, you will still believe it because you are desperately holding on to the identity that you have created in your mind. I haven't read any books on psychology. This is just me pondering on stuff. Just, it takes one to know one because we've all been through this. So you could show this video to the public and the people who support the police are going to say, oh yeah, the cop was right because he tried to use the vehicle as a weapon. And that would be true. The people who hate the cops, because their identities are so attached to this idea of being anti-police because they think that they're, I don't know, fighting Hitler or something, they're going to reject the facts. They're going to say, no. Just because he tried to use his car against law enforcement don't mean he needs to die. They should have just shot him in the leg. Look, his foot is hitting the accelerator, right? He needs his foot to hit the accelerator. Him hitting the accelerator is dependent on him having a foot. So just shoot him in the foot. That's all you got to do. Why you got to shoot him? Why you got to shoot a brother 5 times? Why you got to shoot a man 5 times? And they're going to use this argument, right? And you can't win with these people. Like, there's no point in even trying to have any sort of discourse with these people, because no matter what truth you present to them, they're always going to reject it. And then they're going to bring up George Floyd, or they're going to bring up Malcolm X or some nonsense like that. You can't win with these people. It's impossible. So really, the only purpose for the video, the only effective reason to have the body cam footage is for the court. Let the court review it and let the court decide it. Showing the body cam footage to the people, it's just good entertainment because we all find it entertaining to watch. It's like a movie. It's like a movie. People like watching it. We also like watching it because it confirms our beliefs. If the video shows the cop being on the right and it's completely undeniable that the cop is on the right to use deadly force, then we would all say the people who support the police, the people who support sanity, will say, yeah, the cop's right. People who hate the cops will never be convinced by it. That's just the bottom line. They'll never be convinced by it. So the people who hate the police are saying, well, we demand a video. We demand a video. Well, even if we showed the video, is it going to convince you otherwise? Is it going to persuade you to be like, oh yeah, Andrew Brown was not innocent. He needed to be put down because he was trying to use his vehicle as a weapon. It's not going to convince you of that. So all you're really doing is fueling the mob. That's all you're doing when you put out these videos. When you release the body cam footage. Well, what you got to hide? We got nothing to hide. As the district attorney has clearly said, upon reviewing the footage, the officers were on the right. They were justified. You put out that video, and guess what you have? You got a bunch of mob schmucks walking around acting as if they're criminal experts all of a sudden. They're experts on being an officer. All of a sudden, they know how to do the cop's job better than the cop. It's amazing. American police officers are the best cops in the world. They are. American cops are the best cops in the world. Better than British cops, better than Italian cops, better than any Hispanic cops. They're the best cops in the world. I lived in Mexico. I saw Mexican cops. They're very corrupt. They'll take bribes. I went to Italy, and they got their own police, but the cops in Italy, it's like you see a 90-pound woman with a machine gun walking around. Yeah, and then you got Spain. I went to Spain, and all the cops there look like they're about to go to the park to play soccer. American cops are the best cops in the world, and they are also the most disciplined cops. And it's amazing, the cops that are the best in the world are also the most hated in the world. American cops are the best cops in the world, and they are the most hated cops in the world. You have people in countries who shouldn't even be talking, bashing American cops. You got people in Europe who are like, oh, those American cops, yeah, they just hate black people. And I'm thinking, which country are you in? Sweden? What's the murder rate of Sweden? Almost nothing. They got like 1 murder per 100,000. So they got 10 million people. Their murder rate is very, very small. People in Denmark are like, oh, look at those bad cops. Denmark, how many murders do you have in Denmark? It's not a whole lot, although that's probably about to change pretty soon. See, I don't really agree with people when they start doing this equivalency between America and Europe. America and Europe are 2 different places. They are 2 different places, 2 different cultures, 2 different everything. I laugh when I hear white Americans say, oh, I'm European. No, you're not. Your ancestors were European. You're not European. Your family has been living in America for generations. You don't speak any other language except English. You listen to country music and you drink like wine cooler all the time. Like you're not European. America and Europe are very different places. America is a more violent place than much of Europe. Yes, I understand that there were some pretty horrific things that happened in the Balkans in the 1990s, but that was during a war. I'm speaking of general living. in general, in the sense of everyday life, America is a more violent place than Europe. Our murder rate is very high. We have thousands upon thousands of murders every year in this country. I think we have like over 15,000 murders a year. Now you could say, well, it's because of population. You could use that argument, but I don't think it's really quite adequate because Nigeria has a smaller population than the U.S. and Nigeria has a higher murder rate than America. So it's not necessarily population; it's just the murder rate. America has a high murder rate. We also have a very high rate of mass shootings. We have a high rate of literal massacres that take place in places that you wouldn't expect a massacre to happen in, like grocery stores. We had a massacre in El Paso. I think it was in 2019. Some guy went into a Walmart in El Paso and just killed a bunch of people because he hated Mexicans. We had a shooting in a grocery store. I forget in which state, but it happened this year. We had the massacre in a country western concert, country music concert. 50 people were killed. We've had tons of school shootings here. We have a very high murder rate. America is a crazy place. It's a crazy ass place. We have a very high rate of sexual molestation, very high rate of child abuse. We have a very high number of abusive and violent cults in the United States. And if the cult isn't big, like, I don't know, Benny Hinn size big or Joel Osteen big, then we have these little tiny cults called homeschooling cults where parents abuse their children. And that happens a lot in the United States. It happens way too much. So there's a lot of weirdness in America, which means we also have the most armed population in the history of the world. We have 300 million guns or something like that. We have hundreds of millions of weapons. We have one gun. I think it's like we have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 guns per person in the United States. We're super armed. We have a very high rate of drug usage in this country. Lots of meth, lots of opioids. Whereas when you go to Europe, yeah, there's people using drugs, but it's not. I don't think it has as much of the craziness that you see in the United States. So, for example, when people say, well, we should legalize all drugs. Look, Portugal did it. Portugal legalized all drugs, so we should just do that. Well, actually, Portugal didn't legalize all drugs. Portugal decriminalized drugs. But you just can't go around in Portugal, taking meth. There is a limit to how many drugs you can possess. If you go above the limit, you will go to prison or jail. You're going to face time behind bars. If you go below the limit, then you will have to go through some kind of rehabilitation. If you refuse to go through rehab, you will have to do community service, or you could be fined. There's all sorts of punishments and regulations that you could go through if you are caught with drugs in Portugal. And this also goes for tourists. And with this sort of system in Portugal, the rate of drug use is very, very low in Portugal, and the amount of drug deaths in Portugal are pretty low. It's like 26 deaths every year. Compare that to the United States, where we have a very high rate of drug use, and we also have a very high death rate because of drug abuse and substance abuse. So with such a drugged society, not just with street drugs, but legal drugs from the pharmaceutical companies, with such a high rate of drug use, with being the most armed society in the history of man, with having such a high murder rate, with having such a huge population, with having such a high rate of mental illness in the country, it doesn't surprise me that every year people get shot by cops. It doesn't surprise me that every year people get shot by cops. And to sit here and act shocked by this, and to sit here and be like, "Oh my God, cops are so bad," you either have to be a liar, or you have to be the most dumbest person in the world to fall for this stuff. And if you look at the activism world, you see people who are obviously very dishonest, and they simply want to use the media attention on these stories to foment revolution. And then you have people who, walk around with yoga pants and drink their Starbucks, and they think that they're progressive and they think that they're anti-racist, except they don't live in a black neighborhood. And they say defund the police, and they're white, and they say defund the police. And they talk about racist cops, yet they live in a gated community and they have no black friends. But they want you to believe them. Those people are obviously just brain dead. All right. You guys saw the video. You guys know my thoughts on this. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.